Okay, so let me introduce speaker a little bit. Dr. Azfar Samin, after leaving Pakistan Air Force in mid-90s, he did his uh, PhD from prestigious University of Toronto in mathematical modeling of autonomic regulation of cardiovascular function, a difficult one to pronounce for me. And then he worked with Government of Canada and still working as senior IT manager. And he was also involved with R&D consultant as an R&D consultant with Defense Research and Development Canada, University of Toronto. With this brief intro, I hand it over to Dr. Asfar Samin. Thank you, Asfar. Over to you.
बहुत शुक्रिया सर
Asfar, before you start, may I ask you, आप AVM इनाम की बेटी वर्दा है, उसने भी कोई कार्डियोवास्कुलर में कुछ किया? Do you know him? Do you know her?
No sir, unfortunately I don't sir.
चलें, please continue.
Can you see my screen sir?
Yeah.
बिल्कुल.
You
Anybody not seeing his screen?
We have.
Okay.
I think we are the first page.
चलो ठीक है. Okay, so the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. So today's topic is that I would like to share some knowledge with you is about investment opportunities in cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance. So basically, I've loosely divided the talk into 4 parts. First part will talk in a very simple way and explain what a blockchain is. I think that's important to understand before we can get to the understanding of Bitcoin. And the second part of the talk will explain what a Bitcoin is based on the underlying technology of blockchain and why its price is rising so much. And then we'll touch upon in the third part some of the other blockchain platforms that are now becoming popular with the different distributed applications getting on board in the world of decentralized finance. And the final part of my talk would address some of the investment strategies that are available in this area, some risks and challenges, and there's a slide that shows what is happening in Pakistan. And finally, I will wrap up the presentation with giving you some idea as to if you are an investor wanting to invest in space, what are your opportunities and how you can get on in the Bitcoin bandwagon. So let's look at the short history of Bitcoin. So in its 12 years of short history, blockchain technology has really come a long way. It now has more than $1 trillion market cap that is invested in the blockchain space. There are more than 8,000 plus coins or projects that are now doing something useful and have their own tokens. And that includes more than 3,000 distributed applications that are deployed in different blockchain platforms, providing some useful value to the users. Purely from a Bitcoin perspective, there are now more than 100,000 plus nodes globally in the world, providing a secure network to the Bitcoin technology. And in terms of users, there are about 1.2 million wallets, which you can use to store and transact in Bitcoins. And finally, as opposed to people thinking that Bitcoin has no value and it will eventually go to zero, against all odds, Bitcoin price has now reached $33,000. And now institutions, financial institutions have realized that it is indeed a financial asset, and they're going to the SEC to get approval to include this particular asset in their portfolios. So let's move on to trying to understand what a blockchain is. And I'm just going to try and keep the discussion as non-technical as I can, because I really want everyone to understand the underlying technology, because if you don't understand the technology, it will be hard for you to understand why people are investing in this space. So I'll try to make it as simple as possible. So let's look at a certain scenario, right, where a physical transaction happens between two people, Alice and Bob, right? So Alice hands Bob a physical token. Bob now has one token and Alice has zero, right? So the transaction is complete because we are in the physical world. So Alice and Bob really don't need anyone in between to verify that transaction. Alice can't give Charlie the same token because she no longer has the token to give because she has given it to Bob. Now, what happens if the same scenario were to happen in the digital space, right? Alice sends Bob a digital token via email or in a file, for example. So Bob should have the digital token and Alice should not, right? But we know that that's not true, because what if Alice makes copies or forgeries of the digital token? What if Alice puts that same digital token online for all to download? I mean, after all, it's just a digital token, which is just a string of ones and zeros. So if Alice and Bob own the same strings of ones and zeros, so the question that we must ask is that who is the true owner of the digital token? If the digital assets can reproduce so easily, what would stop Alice from trying to spend the same digital asset twice by also sending it to Charlie, for example? So one way we can solve this problem is through a ledger. So the ledger can track that single asset, the digital token. So when Alice gives Bob the digital token, the ledger records the transaction, Bob has the token and Alice does not. But things are not easy as it sounds, right? We have another problem, right? So that whose job will it be to hold the ledger? Alice can't hold the ledger because she might erase the transaction and say that she still owns the digital token, even though she has given it to Bob. We know that it can't be Bob because he could alter the transaction and lie to say that Alice gave him 2 tokens, doubling his quantity. So Alice and Bob can solve this problem by bringing in a trusted third party, right? An intermediary who's not involved in the transaction at all, right? So let's call him Dave. So Dave will hold the ledger and make sure that it's up to date. So things work fine, right? Until they don't. So here's some new problems that come up in this scenario. So what if Dave decides to charge a fee that, for example, Alice or Bob don't want to pay? And what if Alice bribes Dave to erase her transaction? Maybe Dave wants a digital token for himself and adds a false transaction to the ledger in order to steal the token and saying that Bob gave him his token. And even more interesting, what if Alice and Bob live in a community where the community gives Dave the power to create tokens? So Dave can create 1 trillion tokens and give those tokens to his friends and buddies so that they can speculate in the stock market or give out loans to other people and collect interest on it. And if, for example, if those friends of his take extreme risks and lose that money, Dave can then bail them out and give them more tokens at the expense of Alice and Bob, greatly depreciating the value of those tokens. So I think the observant folks who are attending this lecture can understand where I'm going with this. So what happens when Alice and Bob and the rest of the community cannot trust that trusted third party? So here's another idea, right? So what if Alice and Bob could distribute the ledger to all their trusted friends, right? Not just Dave, and basically decentralize their trust. So because the ledger is digital, all copies of the ledger could sync together, right? If a simple majority of the participants agree that the transaction is valid, it gets added to the ledger. So when a lot of people have a copy of the same ledger, it becomes more difficult to cheat. And if Alice or Bob want to falsify a transaction, right, they would have to they would have to when a lot of people, right, have the copy of the ledger, right, it becomes difficult to cheat. So if you want to falsify a transaction, it is much harder than compromising a single participant. So when a lot of people have a copy, right, it becomes more difficult to cheat. So Alice can't claim that she never sent a digital token to Bob. Her ledger would not agree with everyone else. Bob could also say the same thing, but his ledger could then be out of sync. And if Alice and Dave, for example, they want to bribe Dave to change the copy of his ledger, others would then know of it and then reject that transaction. So basically, in sum, the distributed ledger works because everyone is holding up a copy of the same ledger, and the more trusted people that hold the ledger, the stronger it will become, right? So in a scenario where you have an open source system, there is a possibility that you don't only have trusted friends, but there could be some untrusted people who want to join the network. So there are some risk of bad actors, right? When it comes to Alice and Bob's trusted friends, Dave might turn untrustworthy, or there's someone else, right? So to get around these untrusted nodes to agree on the state of the ledger, how can we avoid the bad actors corrupting the ledger? So let's think about this for a moment, right? There's a public ledger that would allow for many more participants. The more the participants, the stronger the network, right? But in a scenario, right, in a real life scenario, it's not that simple, right? You need to create some kind of a scenario to reward the good actors and somehow scare off the bad ones, right? A classic kind of a carrot and stick kind of a policy. And that is where the blockchain technology comes in. So the blockchain is basically a database that stores information in blocks using cryptography and mathematical proofs to solve the double spend problem that we discussed earlier. It can also be used as a distributed ledger for transactions, right? And it has the following properties, right? So you don't need a trusted third party. It's a trustless system. You don't need anyone to transact, anyone's permission to transact. So Alice and Bob can transact without bringing anyone in between. And the transaction is immutable. And what that means is that once the transaction has been stored in the block using cryptography algorithms, it cannot be forged, erased, copied, or removed. That's it. Once it's done, it's done. And because of the math behind the cryptography, the blockchain technology is extremely secure. So distributed ledger technology, right, to basically encourage good actors and scare off the bad ones, right, solves this problem of these untrusted nodes through some clever economics. So what happens is that certain participants are incentivized to do the dirty work to maintain the network. And these participants are called miners. And what their role is that they bundle the transactions, all the transactions that are happening between Bob and Alice and someone else, into a block. And that block gets attached to the chain. And that is why it's called blockchain. And that work requires immense computational power to the network in the process. And for doing this work, these miners are rewarded with tokens, right? So as the price of the token increases, this is a strong incentive for them to continue mining for the coins. And because of the intense computational power, that computational power helps them to secure the network, because this scares away the hackers and the bad actors, because hacking the network becomes very expensive. Because everyone is using a lot of computing power to verify the transactions, the hacker needs to at least have a 50%, 51% or more of computing power. And that would be a tremendous amount of power, consuming electricity and money. And that is how the overall network is secured and to keep the bad actors away. Okay, so now with this understanding, we can now start to talk about a Bitcoin, which is just a use case for this blockchain technology. So Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system that allows for online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. It was developed by a person with the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto, and we really don't know who he was. He originated this idea by publishing a paper, and then he worked with some of his cryptographic colleagues to create this Bitcoin technology. It went online, and suddenly one day he signed off, and then he disappeared from the scene. So nobody really knows who he is. So Bitcoin basically is a transaction, as I've explained before, is immutable, right? Once you have created a transaction in the blockchain, it cannot be changed, erased, copied, or forged. And the whole value of the Bitcoin comes from a combination of its network effects, the security it provides through this immense computational power, and the scarcity, because the supply of Bitcoin is limited, as I will explain later. So basically, Bitcoin has the property to act as money and as well as a store of value that no one really controls. So just to give you some background as to how these people and the reason behind why they decided to create Bitcoin is this happened right after the 2008 financial crisis, which caused a lot of people to lose trust in banks as trusted third parties. And many questions the idea, right, whether banks were the best guardians of the global financial system. Some bad investment decisions were made by major banks, and some of the bets that they made proved catastrophic, so that the central bank had to bail them out. So some of these people, they said, you know what, we are going to figure out another alternative, and they came out with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin made digital transactions possible without a trusted intermediary. And the technology allowed this to happen at scale, right, globally, with cryptography doing what institutions like commercial banks and regulators and central banks used to do, which is to verify the legitimacy of the transactions and safeguard the integrity of the underlying asset. So in sum, Bitcoin is a decentralized public ledger. So there is no trusted third party required in controlling that ledger. And anyone with Bitcoin can participate in the network. It's open source. You can send and receive Bitcoin and even hold a copy of this ledger if you really wanted to. So in that sense, the ledger is trustless and transparent. From a technical perspective, the mining that I talked to you about, creates the Bitcoin's consensus mechanism, and it's called the proof of work. So let's see how a typical Bitcoin transaction works. So suppose Alice wants to send Bob a couple of Bitcoins. So she will send the request to the computers known as the miners, who will then verify this transaction, which means that they will check the balance of Alice's wallet. And then what they will do is, to get the reward of Bitcoins, they will compete. They will compete with the other miners to place that transaction into a block with the other transactions so that they can get paid, right? So in step 3, to append a block, right, to the chain of the prior blocks, the miners, to do the work, they have to solve a difficult math puzzle. And that requires, as I said before, a lot of computational power to solve. And because a lot of miners around the world are trying to solve this math problem, they require the aggregate computational power that is being spent to this network acts as some kind of a system that protects the whole blockchain, right, against the hackers. So it would become very, very difficult and expensive for any hacker to falsify the transactions or attack the network. And that's what gives it that sheer power behind the scenes, which makes Bitcoin valuable. So once the one of the miners is able to solve the math puzzle, they then get the right to get the Bitcoins, and they submit that block to the other miners who can verify that miner's work, which is a pretty straightforward thing to do. It doesn't require any compute resources. And once the confirmation happens and the answer is verified, then the majority of the network miners in the network approve the block, and the miner who solved the puzzle gets not only paid in Bitcoin, but also gets to collect the transaction fees that is charged to Alice to send 2 Bitcoins to Bob. And finally, the Alice's transaction gets added to the block and it's appended to the blockchain along with the others in that distributed ledger. And finally, Bob sees the 2 Bitcoins appear in his wallet. So this is pretty much how a Bitcoin transaction happens. Okay, so this particular Bitcoin tracks a single asset, right? The blockchain has certain rules that Satoshi Nakamoto, designed the protocol in that way. One of which states that there only can be 21 million Bitcoins. And all participants must agree to Bitcoin's rules in order to use it. And so far, about 18.5 million Bitcoins have already been mined. Some of that supply has been lost due to people losing their passwords or their wallets, so supply a little less. And the last coin will be mined in the year 2140, after which there will no longer be any Bitcoin mined. So you can see that its scarcity increases with time. So the way the protocol was designed, that there is a halving event that happens every 4 years or 210,000 blocks, right? Which means in that, what happens is that the number of Bitcoins that are as a block reward, they get halved. So in last May of 2020, we went through the 4th halving event where the Bitcoin miners only get 6.2 Bitcoins for every block that they mine. But the good thing is that the price of the Bitcoin has continued to appreciate. So all that electricity charges that they incur and all the expensive mining equipment that they have to buy to keep mining is the overall cost is much less than the profit that they are making in mining the Bitcoins. Okay, so let's try and see why the price of Bitcoin is rising. And for that, you have to understand how our current monetary system works, right? So I'll just spend a little bit of time trying to explain the fractional reserve banking system, which is, we know already, is based on credit, where a bank can lend more fiat money than it has in deposits. So we have an asset to reserve ratio of, for example, 0.1. Alice deposits $1,000 and the bank can then keep $100 as an asset and then loan out 900 of those dollars to Bob. So what has just happened? The money supply has increased by $900 and the total money supply has become $1,900. And the bank then gets to charge a certain interest rate on that $900 that it has loaned out, right? And because we only have $1,900 in the system, the money that is needed to pay back the interest doesn't really exist. So the only way that this particular system can work is for the bank to issue more money and more credit, right? And because the money is no longer backed by gold and created out of nothing by the banks and they collect interest on it. So it's a very interesting scheme that leads to an increase in money supply and leads to all kinds of issues such as inflation, bailouts, bail-ins, encourages speculation, creating all kinds of asset bubbles, financial crisis, and wealth inequality. Bail-in, by the way, is different from bailout. I think everyone understands what a bailout is. I'll just try and explain what a bail-in is. Now that the system is very fragile, most of the Western governments have sneaked in legislation and made it law that in case of a future financial crisis, they will have an additional option where if they decide not to bail out an institution, they'll put all of the risks that the banks took on the creditors. And who are the creditors? The individual depositors, you and I, who put money in the banks. So they will take that money or a part of that money to recapitalize those banks and give you those worthless shares of those toxic assets. So that's what a bail-in means. Okay, so also there are other problems that because of all those social spending all around the world, the government debts have gone through the roof. There are pension liabilities that have soared while the interest rates have become negative. So all these pension funds really don't have any means to earn any yield on their savings or their investments. So in this kind of environment of easy money, Bitcoin is acting as a store of value that is out of the reach of the central banks and the governments. And to give you an example of how bad things are, is that this particular graph shows you the combined balance sheet of Fed, the Bank of Japan, and the European central banks, is that they have taken on all these toxic assets in their countries that should really have gone bankrupt and put them on their balance sheets and monetize them at the expense of taxpayers. And especially the last part of the graph in the year 2020, because of the COVID crisis, look at how this graph has skyrocketed. And this is likely to continue more and more in the future because we keep hearing about stimulus checks and their money needs to be paid for the vaccines. And so the trillions of dollars are going to continue to be printed at the expense of the value of the currency. You will see more and more inflation. And in that kind of environment, you need something where you can invest or hold your saving in some store of value like Bitcoin or gold or any other asset such as real estate. So let's talk quickly about what money is, because I think that's important. People really don't understand in the fiat currency system, which is backed by nothing. Money is basically a medium of exchange. If people want to transact, it makes the whole trade more efficient, right? It's also acts as a store of value as well as a unit of account. And ideally, one of the more important properties of money is that it should have limited supply and be difficult to create. And Bitcoin, if you compare it with other types of money such as gold or fiat money, is rates very highly with other traits such as fungibility, which means one coin should look exactly as another. It's non-consumable. It's highly portable, unlike gold. It's durable. It's highly divisible. One Bitcoin is equal to 100 million Satoshis. So Satoshi is the smallest divisible piece, or like a penny or a paisa for Bitcoin. So it's highly divisible. It's also secure because of the network effects that I explained to you earlier. It's easily transactable, and more importantly, it's scarce. Once the 21 million supply has been mined, no more Bitcoins. So that gives us an opportunity to investors to invest in Bitcoin because it's to go higher because of its scarcity properties. More importantly, it's sovereign. No one really owns Bitcoin. It's open source technology. No government owns it. Nobody really owns it. It's the computer nodes are scattered all across the globe, holding these distributed ledgers. So if the government wants to go after anyone, they don't have anyone to go after. The whole thing is decentralized, and one of the very neat thing about Bitcoin is smart, which means that it's programmable, and you can add layer 2 solutions on top of Bitcoin to make it transactions more efficient. Okay, so a number of Bitcoin proponents have, tried to figure out how they can figure out what is the utility of Bitcoin and how you can value Bitcoin, right? So one of the ways that they have expressed its value is through the Lindy effect. And Lindy effect is basically a theory that states that the future life expectancy of some non-perishable idea, things like a technology or an idea, is proportional to their current age. So that every additional period of survival implies a longer remaining life expectancy, right? So for example, if gold has been there for as many as 5,000 years, you can expect that, it's going to continue on. Or if the wall of China has been there for 2,000 years, you can expect that it's going to continue on. So on that particular metric, Bitcoin has 12 years have passed, and there are a lot of people who said that, Bitcoin is going to go to zero, it doesn't have any value. Yet, even though it has corrected by about 80%, the prices have crashed along the way. Somehow or the other, it has survived. Till now, it hasn't really gone to zero, but instead, its value continues to appreciate, right? It keeps on going up. So as time passes, you're seeing that the Lindy effect is going to factor in more and more as far as Bitcoin is concerned. And it is quite possible where we one day could see this to be a widespread medium of exchange. And some people even think that it could act as a global monetary reserve settlement system as well. Okay, so here's another chart that a researcher has used to predict the price of Bitcoin based on the stock to flow model. And stock to flow model is something that measures the scarcity of a resource. So the formula for this stock to flow is the total reserves that you have above ground for, say, any resource such as gold or silver, divided by the annual production of that particular resource. So for example, the stock to flow ratio of gold is 60, which means that it'll take 60 years of annual production to bring the to equate to the total reserves that gold has currently above ground. And silver is a little lower, which is 21. And these gold and silver, as we know, have historically been good sources of money because they have a high stock to flow ratio, as opposed to metals like copper that have a stock to flow ratio of 0.1, which means that if tomorrow a country decides to have copper as its as money, the copper miners can go and just create a lot of copper and dump it into the system, completely destroying that currency, that money. So right now, the stock to flow ratio of Bitcoin is around 50. And because of the halving event that happens every 4 years, the stock to flow ratio doubles every 4 years, right? So 4 years ago, it was 25, now it's 20. And after 4 years, it's going to become 100, which means that it's going to exceed the stock to flow ratio of gold, which is 60 right now. And based on this stock to flow model, this quantitative analyst created this model, which closely, and if you see the price line, which is shown in different colors, is closely tracking this model that is shown on the red line. And if you see that this model is predicting that in the next 5 to 10 years, because of its scarcity and the high stock to flow ratio, the price of Bitcoin could eventually hit $1 million. But that said, it is still a model, and it's possible that the model may break down. But this is what we are seeing right now, that it's closely tracking the model. The price is closely tracking the model so far. Here's another researcher who has predicted the Bitcoin price based on what is called the Metcalfe's law. And the Metcalfe's law suggests that the network value is proportional to the number of users in the network, right? To the square of the number of users in the network. So if you have 10 people in the network, the value of the network is going to be 10 times 10 equal to 100. And if you increase the number by 1, then it will be 11 times 11 equals to 21. So it's the square. So the more the people, the more the adaptability of that particular resource. And the Metcalfe law explains how the network can grow exponentially. And this peer-reviewed, in this peer-reviewed published paper, he has also predicted the price to go all the way to $1 million in around 2028. And this Metcalfe's law has been used to predict the value of the companies such as Facebook, because it works really well for companies that are digital in nature. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the second part. So in the third part of the presentation, I'll talk about the Ethereum platform, which is used to build smart contract distributed applications. So what is a smart contract? A smart contract is just a self-executing contract with the terms of the agreement between one buyer and another seller being directly written into lines of code, right? So if you have some legal agreement that now currently happening where you require a lawyer or some insurance broker, all of that can be coded into lines of code, and then there's no need for those actors to remain in the middle, and you completely decentralize the environment so that the buyer can interact directly with the seller. So the Ethereum platform has 3 layers. The bottom is the blockchain network, which is very similar to the network that I showed you earlier in the presentation. Similar, the miners mine for the Ethereum tokens, they get rewarded, and that provides security to the whole network, and that is how the transactions happen. There is also a Solidity smart contracts programming language that allows the developers to build applications and services. And then on top is the application layer, where the distributed applications can be deployed on this Ethereum blockchain. And right now, the total value locked in Ethereum blockchain is close to $12 billion, which means that the applications are actually doing something useful, and the users are coming in, buying tokens, and using these distributed applications for whatever financial product that they want to invest in, that I'll talk a little bit about later on in the presentation. So Ethereum can be, an analogy can be that it's some kind of a cloud, a decentralized cloud environment, which is not in control of anyone, right? So it's basically borderless. So anyone can come and deploy the application, and they really don't have to worry about the centralized nature of how the present system is organized. So one of the examples of smart contract would be that there is a buyer who wants to buy a house from Bob, the seller, and there's lawyers, brokers, and insurance agents in between. And once the Alice buys the house from, the title will be transferred over to Alice. And a smart contract can remove the middle layer from the equation. All of this can be coded as law. And once Alice pays Bob the price of the house, Bob will transfer the title over to Alice, and that transaction will then be recorded in a blockchain and will become immutable, which means that it cannot be erased or falsified. And this type of of a model is quite beneficial to developing nations where there can be fraudulent transactions happening, where people can falsify titles in someone else's name, and that creates a lot of problems in that space. So blockchain technology can hopefully can address those kind of challenges in these developing nations. So what is happening right now is that we are moving towards a token economy, right? So whenever you want to use the blockchain, you'll probably have to buy a token. And as the utility of that token increases, its demand will also increase. And that will be reflected in the price of the token. And if you're an investor in that space, you can benefit from this opportunity. So there are now other blockchains that I will briefly talk about. Most important is the Ethereum 2.0. This is the next iteration of Ethereum 1.0 that I showed you earlier. And they're making certain changes because there are inherent problems still that need to be resolved. And some of these problems are around the high transaction fees. The Ethereum 1.0 is not as scalable as it should be compared to some of the very fast payment systems that we have now with Visa and MasterCard. So they're moving to a new consensus model, moving from the proof of work to a proof of stake model, which is quite inefficient, but it's based on people staking money or investing their capital to safeguard the security of the network. Cardano is another competitor of Ethereum. Ethereum had first user advantage. Cardano is really very methodical in its approach. It's being run by a bunch of PhDs who are taking a very meticulous approach. They've got hundreds of published papers that they're using as mathematical proofs to build a technology that is really, really built from the bottom up. So Cardano is really going to give a very interesting, there will be an interesting competition between Cardano and Ethereum. So lots of evolution happening at the blockchain platform level. VeChain is a supply chain management blockchain, and it addresses issues around supply chain. One use case would be that it addresses the problem of counterfeiting for brand name items. So the brand name items can launch their application on their VeChain, and the users or the customers can see if that brand name actually originated from the real source rather than buying something that's counterfeit. Chainlink is a very interesting use case, and it solves the problem of that Ethereum and Cardano, they are decentralized systems. So if you remain within that ecosystem, it's fine. But what happens when you have to go out? You still have to go out and get the data that will be used to execute the smart contracts, right? So the Chainlink solves this problem by creating another decentralized system which grabs data from all of the data service providers, such as stock market data or real estate data or all kinds of data, and provides this data to the decentralized application so that they can execute their smart contracts. So very interesting project happening in Chainlink. Stellar and XRP are basically blockchains that solve the payment, they address the payment solution, and they have the ability to create what is now being labeled as central bank digital currencies. They're working with different central banks because we know that the central banks are now looking to digitize their currencies. So these are the two platforms that are the strong contenders where the central banks will be deploying those solutions. Fusion, Cosmos, and Polkadot, they are also actually they're being called as the blockchain of blockchains. So to give you an analogy for those familiar with in IT is that of a virtualized system where you have a hypervisor and top of the hypervisor, you can have different operating systems like Linux or Windows. And basically, it gives you further flexibility, right? Ethereum is just one blockchain. When people have observed that some of the decentralized applications can have their own nuances, so they need their own blockchain, right? And those blockchains can then be integrated with other blockchains. So that is the kind of use case that Polkadot, Cosmos, and Fusion is providing. So lots of development happening in this space. Is early days, just like the .com period we saw in the 80s. People who got in earlier really got the opportunity to see the asymmetric upside in that space, and it is expected that we're going to see something similar in the blockchain as well in the next 5 to 10 years. A slide about a cryptocurrency wallet. So the world is moving towards everybody having their own wallets, which would have tokens. So what is a wallet? It's just a software program that stores your private and public keys and interacts with various blockchains to allow users to send and receive digital currency and monitor their balance, right? So you have a public key. Whenever you want to get paid, you share your public key with the sender, and that sender will send you the coins using that public key. The private key is your own. You never share your private key with anyone, because if you do, your funds inside your wallet are likely to get stolen. There are different kinds of wallets. They could be an online wallet, mobile wallets, and then if you have lots of cryptos, then it's better for you to buy a hardware wallet, which is going to keep your cryptos in cold storage away from the prying eyes of the hackers. You can have a desktop wallet or even a paper wallet. Here is an example of how a typical wallet called Exodus looks like. You can see all the tokens at the bottom that this user has bought and the total value of those tokens. You can you use this wallet to send tokens to another holder, and so on and so forth. So one day we'll not be using credit cards, but just transacting using our wallets. There's another genre of cryptos called stable coins. And these stable coins are basically fiat-pegged coins that act as a bridge between the old and the new models, right? And the idea here is that it retains the supposed security of fiat currencies while allowing the users to access cryptocurrency markets and blockchain services more easily. So if you go on an exchange, if you want to trade or invest, it's usually done in pairs, because you want to remain in the same ecosystem. You don't want to go from a crypto to a fiat. You'd rather remain in another crypto. So if you, for example, are a trader, a short-term trader, and the price of Bitcoin rises by a couple of $1,000s, and you want to take profits, instead of going back to fiat, you will just go to sell your Bitcoin and move to a stable coin such as Tether or USDC, and park your money over there, remaining in the crypto space. And the other thing, benefit of stable coins is now that the US Office of the Comptroller of the Currency has officially permitted US banks to use stable coins. So these stable coins are likely going to be similar to, or maybe the central banks can use them as their own currencies in the future. Okay, some concept about how the big Bitcoin or other token exchanges work. So there are two types of exchanges. One is called a centralized exchange, which you are familiar with. They're more traditional. You go and do a account, and then you can trade in and start buying different coins such as Bitcoin, right? And in this case, your exchange controls the funds. You're not anonymous, and it's similar to how you would open a stock trading account. The decentralized models came into being in the last year or two when the governments tried to ban these centralized exchanges. The developer said, okay, you know what we're going to do is we're going to create decentralized exchanges that are borderless, right? And in this case, the user controls the funds through the wallet. The wallet is integrated to this decentralized exchange. It's anonymous. There is no AML or KYC required. And the good thing is that these decentralized exchanges are tokenized. So if you buy their token and then you use this decentralized exchange, you can participate in the profits that these decentralized exchanges enjoy through the bid and ask spreads. So, for example, this Uniswap exchange is hosted on the Ethereum blockchain and uses the gas, right, or the transaction fee as it's called, to trade one token or exchange one token with another, right? And that's how the transaction fees are charged. And the folks who have bought the token participate in the appreciation of the token. Some of the investment opportunities in cryptos, the easiest is for you to just buy some coin and speculate on the price. There is as I've explained some of those earlier models that I showed, there is likely to be an asymmetric upside, like the .com era. It's being hailed as the Web 3.0, and as more and more dApps are created to take advantage of this trustless and permissionless properties of the blockchains, the price of these projects and the tokens is likely to go way higher. Other ways of investing is through mining. You can find some cheap electricity source, invest in some mining equipment or join a mining pool. But because of the large electricity requirements, the whole proof of work mining system is so electricity intensive that if you aggregate the amount of electricity being used, it is equal to the electricity Can you see me? Can you see my presentation, sir?
We see you. Thanks.
So it's actually because it's the electricity being spent is actually equal to that of a small country like Switzerland, right? So this particular proof of work consensus model is actually going out of favor to the proof of stake consensus model protocol. And in the proof of stake, the idea here is to improve the transaction speeds and avoid all these electricity needs. But the downside is that you need capital to become a validator. So you will invest, for example, for Ethereum 2.0, you need to buy 32 ETH coins, which cost right now at about $40,000 to become a validator. And your responsibility will be to secure the network as a validator, and once you do that, you will be rewarded with coins. Other way to participate is through airdrops. There are some new projects or tokens that are coming or starting their projects, and just to jumpstart the network, they'll give you some tokens free to the early investors. Other couple of ways of earning yield is through yield farming and liquidity pools. And in how this works is that if you have a decentralized exchange, what you can do is that if you're holding some coins like Bitcoin or Ethereum, and you just want to hold for the long term, what you can do is you can submit those tokens as a pair, because the decentralized exchanges need liquidity to get the buyers and the sellers to have an efficient market, right? So they ask for the liquidity to be there, and in exchange for providing liquidity, they will give you a portion of the profits that are generated through the buying and selling of these tokens. And finally, you can stake your coin. So if you buy 100 tokens of some project, you can stake the tokens and the purpose of that is that you're actually participating in securing the network. And in exchange, the project is going to give you a certain yield in the form of tokens that hopefully will appreciate in price in the future. Okay, some of the risk challenges, there is volatility, there can be price swings of up to 80%, but that is expected to decline because now the institutions are getting on board and they are trying to buy Bitcoin, and these people are not looking for short-term profits. So we should expect to see the swings decline. There can be exchange hacks, there could be software vulnerabilities, bugs in the exchanges, millions of dollars of cryptos have been stolen. And it is recommended that if you have a large amount of crypto, it should be stored in a cold wallet. Here, just I would like to make a distinction that even though the exchanges have been hacked, not a single hack has actually been happened on the Bitcoin system itself. It's only the infrastructure that is around Bitcoin where the hack has happened. And that's what 12 years after 12 years, there is not a single notable event that tells us that the Bitcoin is hacked in any way. So it's with the amount of compute power that it has, these large institutions who now understand the value of Bitcoin are putting in billions of dollars of Bitcoin, which is why its price is increasing every month, practically speaking. There could be scams. People may ask you for your private key, so don't share that with anyone, or they will ask you to send tokens, and in exchange, they will send you 10 times more tokens, and you see that scam happening all the time on Twitter, so please avoid. There could be rug pulls, early investors or anonymous developers, they dump tokens on investor after the initial hype, so better is initially is to stick with the well-established top 10 to 20 coins with reputable dev teams. The government regulation continues to improve in favor of investors, and they have created these on-off ramps requiring KYC, and the profits are now being treated as capital gains. So if you want to invest, as long as you are abiding by the government rules, everything is fine so far. But at the end of the day, for countries that have banned the use of cryptos, you still have these distributed applications that are borderless. And if you have access to that kind of an exchange, you can still invest in cryptos. There is a problem of high transaction fees in times of network congestion that is being addressed by developers through layer 2 solutions and other consensus protocols, such as the proof of stake that I talked to you about before. So hopefully that is going to be resolved. And then, of course, there is the quantum computing issue that everyone keeps talking about, that the current cryptographic algorithms can be cracked when the higher qubit quantum computers are developed. But if that happens, then all of the internet security protocols are vulnerable, right? Not only just the cryptos. In Pakistan, unfortunately, cryptos are banned by State Bank. I don't know why, but that's how it is. I've heard that the tech freelancers in Pakistan are getting paid in Bitcoin. Fortunately, KPK passed a resolution on legalizing cryptos, and what I've heard is that they are going to set up 2 Bitcoin mining farms, and they're going to pay for it. If you want to trade Bitcoins in Pakistan, there's some peer-to-peer exchanges like Paxful and Local Bitcoins. You want to avoid the scam projects like OneCoin that have been sold to people in Pakistan. So again, you might want to just invest in currencies like Bitcoin or Ethereum. There's a Bitcoin Association of Pakistan. You can go to their website and educate yourself about this new asset class. Okay, final slide. Investment strategy. So as an investor, what can you do? Bitcoin is the king. It has really been audited. It's open source. Everybody now understands the network effects and its ability to act as a store of value. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to invest some money in this space. Ethereum is the queen of blockchain. It has the first mover advantage. So maybe you can diversify some funds in that space. At the end of the day, the space is still evolving. There are a lot of projects that have to become the potential to become the next Google or Amazon, Apple or Microsoft. So, it's good it'll be good if you can educate yourself, do your research, find some good open source projects. And then once you do that, you have to have the convictions to hold through during the temporary declines that are going to happen because of profit taking. But in the long term, if the project is solid, yeah, hopefully, you will see appreciation in your investments. And the best bet for you is to dollar cost average rather than chase price. Normally what happens is that, people listen to the hype and then they invest very late and the price comes down. So best bet for you is to just dollar cost average. And having said all of the above, this is still not financial advice. Please, do your own research. If you're interested in finding out more about Bitcoin, there are a number of books now available that you can read and educate yourself. And I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. I hope I've been able to give you some information that will be valuable to you. So over to you for questions and if you have any.
Well, Azfar, you said this presentation was for a layman. I think as a layman also, it was very high-fi. Nevertheless, I think Pakistan में for commoner to understand this will take a while because हमारे यहाँ 200 million लोगों में से hardly 5 to 10% जो इन चीज़ों को fully grasp कर सकते हैं. The rest, I don't think. दूसरी चीज़ जो मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ कि ये जो Bitcoin है, ये what's the difference between Bitcoin, ये stock exchange या इस किस्म की चीज़ों का क्या? What's the difference? I mean, investment standpoint से. I mean, you either go for a token for Bitcoin or you buy some stocks in the stock market. So I personally don't go for it. But nevertheless, is there कोई similarity or is it two different ball games?
So from an investment point of view, there are similarities, right? Because both have exchanges. And if you want to go and buy a stock, you can go and buy a Google stock, right? The concept of similar. The difference is that it's cryptocurrency that is hosted on a blockchain, and you have got to understand the concept of a decentralized system on some tokenomics. Right? So from an investment perspective, I suppose you could say that it's similar to stock investing, but from a technology perspective, it's a little different because the whole idea is based on decentralization. And that's where the opportunity is that tomorrow's Google and tomorrow's Amazons will be hosted on decentralized systems, right? So that's the major difference, I would say. I hope I've explained.
Asfar, very well explained. My question is, तुम्हारा जो last point था, out which you disclaimer दे दिया, that is, as it is, just say the technology is advancing. So these encryptions or whatever, इनको decrypt करने में time ज़्यादा नहीं लगेगा. I mean, ये आजकल तो गेम ही ये जारी है. Cyber warfare जो जारी है, that is encryption, that decryption, and then encryption. So वहाँ पे how secure one would feel if one goes for this Bitcoin stuff.
Right. So there is always a certain element of risk in whenever you are investing in any space, sir. So what I've tried to explain in some of the slides is that 12 years have passed and Bitcoin is still going on strong. And there are very smart people in this space now who really understand the intricacies of the system, and they have figured out that this particular decentralized peer-to-peer transaction system is solid. And because it requires a lot of compute power for hackers to hack into the system, it's virtually impossible now. It may have been possible earlier on when the system was in its early stages, when the compute power wasn't as much, but now it's virtually impossible. You need more than like 50 to 100 supercomputers to break into the system. The second thing is about the cryptography. The cryptography algorithms are oops, sorry, because it requires billions of combinations or through brute force if you want to break them. So that is not going to happen. And if that happens, then all the internet security protocols are vulnerable. And as I explained, quantum computers could be a source, but researchers are already working. They know this. They're already working on new algorithms that are going to address the quantum computing risk.
Thank you.
My question is that you talk about whenever I heard anything about the blockchain, everybody is talking about the Bitcoin rather than focusing more on the blockchain technology.
जी सर, आपका सवाल क्या है सर?
What the
कि ऐसा
details
क्यों
of the
है?
blockchain technology?
जी सर, कि ऐसा क्यों है? आपके सवाल ये है कि ऐसा क्यों है कि बिटकॉइन के बारे में हर वक्त क्यों बात होती रहती है?
No, my question is blockchain is a technology.
जी सर,
Whenever we talk about the uh, uh, details about the technology, what all is about, and it can have a different uses also.
absolutely sir.
Yeah.
That is where the opportunity is. Smart contracts. The future will be determined through the middle layer, na sir, where the trust happens or where you need permission. That layer is going to disappear through blockchain, right? You will have smart contracts executing these laws and regulations, right, between buyer and seller. So the buyer will buy a token and use that token to transact with the seller, and you don't need any intermediate people in between. So that is going to radically change the at least the financial sector, right? Making it more decentralized. And it's already happening. People are now deploying applications that which allows you to create your own financial products, for example.
So my question is that
Sir,
whenever we talk about the
sir, can I say something here? Maybe it answers your question. You're right. Blockchain is a technology on which ये Bitcoin और cryptocurrency सारी उस पे राइड कर रही हैं. नंबर वन. नंबर टू, ब्लॉकचेन सिर्फ चूंकि टेक्नोलॉजी है तो सिर्फ क्रिप्टो करेंसी में नहीं इस्तेमाल हो रही. दुबई की जो उनकी गवर्नमेंट के बहुत सारे सेक्टर इस पे ट्रांसफर हो गए हैं. यूके के अंदर उन्होंने अपने पेंशन फंड को इसके ऊपर ट्रांसफर कर दिया है. मेन चीज जो ब्लॉकचेन की है, टेक्नोलॉजी की मेन चीज जो इसको डिस्टिंग्विश करती है दूसरी टेक्नोलॉजी से, इट इज इनकरप्टेबल. आप एक चीज जो इस तरह चली जाती है उसको आप रब नहीं कर सकते, अमेंड नहीं कर सकते, किसी तरह से उसको आप मिटा नहीं सकते, चेंज नहीं कर सकते. दैट इज द मेन थिंग. अब कई जगह पे बात हो रही है, स्टिल सिस्टम इज नॉट इन्वॉल्व, कि अगर आप इसको ब्लॉकचेन को फॉर एग्जांपल वोटिंग के अंदर एम्बेड कर दें तो योर वोटिंग विल बिकम ट्रांसपेरेंट एंड इनकरप्टेबल. दैट्स इट फ्रॉम माय साइड. सॉरी.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम, सलमान है.
वालेकुम सलाम.
बहुत सी बातें आपकी जो है ना वो हाई टेक्नोलॉजी से रिलेटेड थी, एंड frankly, like Sir Shahid was saying, बहुत से कम लोगों को समझ आती है, and I'm one of them. But I have a small question to ask, and that was that in case आपके कहने के मुताबिक ये चूंकि इंडिविजुअल ट्रांजैक्शंस के लिए इस्तेमाल हो सकती है और होगी, when you talk about the standards, ये जो second level और individual levels के ऊपर इसकी bifurcation हो जाएगी, So would you think that we are going back towards where commodity-related transactions took place in the much before time, before the coming in of currency and gold-related values? Our number one question is that if it is, we are going towards a commodity transaction-based economy. Number two is that in case that is so, then Bitcoin, because it has a limitation of 21 years or a million, value of like you predicted, 1940 is the time frame. Do you think it has the capacity to be able to do a transaction on individual levels all over the world for all transactions of the world, which run into maybe trillions or quadruples or 10 times the volume of what Bitcoin is doing right now? Thank you.
Right, so I'll address your second question, and this is more of a misunderstanding of the limited supply of the Bitcoin. कि वो लोग कहते हैं कि 21 billion है, तो that is really not enough for a population of 7 billion. So the answer to this question, sir, is that even though the supply is 21 million, it is highly divisible. One Bitcoin, as I explained earlier, is equal to 100 billion satoshis. Right, this is for a paisa. So it's high because of its high divisibility. People think that it's not really a problem for it to act as a global reserve currency. And I think what I see happening is that it's going to become more of a settlement system, right, rather than a payment system. So I think the difference would be that a settlement system would be between countries or between bigger institutions, and there would be some layer 2 solutions on top that will deal with these kind of issues around divisibility, transaction speeds, and scalability. Because Bitcoin has one thing that it really does really well. It is acting as a store of value right now because of all the shenanigans that are going on in the global monetary system. So people have realized that, and they also looked at the network effects of Bitcoin, and they figured out that this is act as money or a medium of exchange, right? And they're putting money in there. The layer 2 solutions are starting to come up where people have, for example, rolling out solutions, what is called streaming money. So you can be paid by the seconds. So there are all kinds of very elegant solutions that will be built on top of the Bitcoin technology. And I don't remember your first question, sir. I really couldn't understand that. If you could repeat that, please.
मैं ये कह रहा था कि since you did point out that these Bitcoin transactions will go down to a sub level of the individual transactions, individual people-to-people transaction. I was going to ask, the question I asked was, okay, would that relate to, like in the past, we have seen commodity-to-commodity transactions rather than the value? For example, a bag of rice would be replaced or can be exchanged with a rice.
Barter system.
Right.
Barter system. Yes, that's the word. Yes, barter
Right.
system. So is that what is where we're heading to? That's my question.
Not really, sir. It's actually heading in the other direction, I would say, because what you see, and I explained in one of the slides where I talked about where I compared Bitcoin with other monetary systems like gold or fiat, it actually makes the medium of exchange even more efficient than fiat currencies, because you really do not need any trusting authority in between. So a person who's sitting in Pakistan can transact directly with another person who's sitting in Canada or in the US without the need for any other institution to come in between. So they actually, you see more and more trade happening because the amount of efficiency due to this decentralized monetary system has dramatically increased. You no longer in a situation where आप $10,000 किसी बैंक को भिजवाते हैं और बैंक उसके ऊपर बैठ जाता है और पूछता है कि भाई ये कहाँ से तुम्हारे पास पैसे आए, क्या करोगे इसका, तुम 10,000 आपसे सवाल पूछते हैं, and delaying the whole transaction. before it's you explain to them कि भाई ये मेरा अपना पैसा है, इस पे मैंने अपना tax दे दिया है, अब इसको जाने दो, and let me buy the stuff I want to do my trade. Bitcoin resolves this issue. Over a period of time, the banks have instituted so much compliance that it's really becoming a problem for folks who want to trade honestly and make a living out of that.
सर सलमान, आपके पॉइंट को थोड़ा सा मैं यहाँ पर एड्रेस करना चाहूँगा सर की इजाज़त से।
बिल्कुल
सर, ये बिटकॉइन जो है नॉर्मल लाइफ में इस्तेमाल हो रहा है। यहाँ पे मैंने एक डॉक्यूमेंट्री देखी थी, उसमें एक बंदे ने अपनी जेब से सारे कैश निकाल दिए, उसने सिर्फ अपना मोबाइल रखा। वो प्रॉब्ली आई थिंक बेल्जियम में हुई थी, डॉक्यूमेंट्री बनाई थी, यूरोप में कहीं पर उन्होंने बनाई थी। एनीवे, वो जहाँ पे भी जाता था, फॉर एग्जाम्पल स्टारबक्स में गया, कहीं पर भी गया, तो वहाँ पर कॉफी वगैरह लेने के लिए ही वॉज यूजिंग बिटकॉइंस फ्रॉम हिज मोबाइल एप्लीकेशन। उन्होंने लिखा होता था वी एक्सेप्ट बिटकॉइन, और बिटकॉइन से वो अपनी पेमेंट करता था, और जो भी उसने अपनी ग्रॉसरी की शॉपिंग करनी होती थी बिटकॉइन से करता था। तो इसकी एक्सेप्टेंस बढ़ती जा रही है। इसका जो मेन चीज है ना, जिसकी वजह से इसकी एक्सेप्टेंस है अगेंस्ट एनी नॉर्मल करेंसी। नॉर्मल करेंसी में क्या होता है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर हम यूएस डॉलर की मिसाल लें कि यूएस डॉलर गवर्नमेंट, जो यूएस की गवर्नमेंट है, वो उसके पास अनलिमिटेड पावर है, जितनी मर्जी छापना शुरू कर दे, ठीक है। अच्छा, उसके छापने से हमें क्या नुकसान होता है एज ए यूजर, कि हमारी जो वैल्यू है, फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आज मेरे पास 100 रुपए हैं और गवर्नमेंट अगर डबल नोट छाप दे, तो मेरे वो $100 की जो वर्थ है वो उससे आधी रह जाएगी बिकॉज ऑफ द इन्फ्लेशन। अच्छा, इसके अंदर बिटकॉइन में क्या है, इसकी सप्लाई लिमिटेड है, इट कैन नेवर गो बियॉन्ड $21 मिलियन, ठीक है। तो चूंकि सप्लाई इसकी लिमिटेड है, डेफिनेट है, सो देयर इज नो पॉइंट ऑफ एनी इन्फ्लेशन इन दिस वन, इट विल रिमेन एज इट इज फॉर एवर। सो ये इसका एक बिगेस्ट आई थिंक एक बड़ा पॉइंट है, जिस बिना पर लोगों का इस पे ट्रस्ट बढ़ता जा रहा है, फिएट करेंसी पे नहीं रहा, क्योंकि वो गवर्नमेंट जब चाहती है छाप देती है।
This is a very most important point if you're going to take away from this presentation, is that the global monetary system right now is very fragile. And because of this rampant money printing, creating all this stimulus money, sending out checks, is going to greatly depreciate the value of the currencies all around the globe. And because the currency is really not backed by anything such as gold, the central banks and the governments are completely out of control. And to continue to with their social spending habits and their pension liabilities, this will continue, and you will continue to see more and more inflation around the world. And it's quite likely that especially the global reserve currency, which is the US dollar, is now nearing its end, and it's quite going to be replaced by something else. And that conversation has already started at the IMF and World Economic Forum level. And if you go and read their websites, they're already talking about what is called the new Bretton Woods system. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Bretton Woods system was an agreement made after the World War II, where US became the world's reserve currency. And after a period of, 70, 80 years, people feel that its time has come to pass the baton to something else. And that something else could be rolled out in the next 10 years or so.
इसको अगर हम सिंपल एक नॉर्मल करेंसी में लेना सर, तो चीज़ें थोड़ी सी आसान हो जाती हैं समझना। इट इज़ जस्ट अनदर करेंसी, और बिल्कुल एक नॉर्मल करेंसी की तरह इसके भी स्टॉक एक्सचेंज है, जहाँ पे आप जाके इसको खरीद सकते हैं, बेच सकते हैं। जिस तरह आप नॉर्मल डॉलर पाउंड खरीदते हैं, बेचते हैं, इसी तरह इसको भी आप खरीद सकते हैं, बेच सकते हैं। इसके भी रेट उन्हीं करेंसी की तरह ऊपर जाते हैं, नीचे जाते हैं। फर्क एक नॉर्मल आदमी के लिए यही है कि इसका कोई नोट नहीं होता, इसका कोई फिजिकल कॉइन नहीं होता, कोई नोट नहीं होता। इट इज नॉट समथिंग फिजिकल, इट जस्ट ए नंबर। दैट इज इट फ्रॉम लेमैन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू। इसका ये फर्क है। बाकी अदरवाइज आप सारे काम कर सकते हैं, जो आपने खरीदारी करनी है, बेचना आप करें, जस्ट लाइक एनी अदर करेंसी।
Yes, sir. एक small
Thank you.
my side. I don't know. I joined the seminar a little late. Maybe it had been explained earlier. Like, I feel if it is so much decentralized, doesn't it open up the gates to the corruption, illegal money laundering? Because everything is kept secret under a secret key or crypted keys. and you can own as much as you like. So are there any checks and balances in place?
Yeah, so this is a very good question that people feel that, this can be money, Bitcoin can be used for illicit activities like drug dealing and whatnot. So the whole idea that you need to understand about the Bitcoin technology is that it's open source. So it's completely transparent. So not only is the technology transparent, but also the transactions are also transparent. Uh, and what I mean by that is whenever a transaction happens, it gets posted on the blockchain so that it can be verified by everyone. So initially, you're right, when the technology was quite new, there were people who used Bitcoin for illicit activities. But now that there's more awareness, the governments have now developed software that they can use to look at all of the transactions and track those illicit activities. So you've seen cases where people have been caught doing illicit activities, and the bitcoins that they transacted using have been flagged, right? So there is increasing realization by the folks who involve themselves in these illicit activities is that the Bitcoin, being so transparent in nature, is no longer the right currency to do these kind of activities.
Okay.
Now, add one more point, and to actually, there are other use cases for other cryptos, and they are called privacy coins. And there, you are right that there is complete anonymization of activities. You cannot see any transactions and the value of those transactions. So you're right that those people are gravitating towards those privacy coins now. But Bitcoin itself, it's completely transparent.
अच्छा, इसकी ट्रांसपेरेंसी को इस तरह भी हम देख सकते हैं कि अगर लेट से किसी भी कंट्री से कैश खत्म कर दिया जाए तो जो भी आप ट्रांजैक्शन करेंगे बैंक के थ्रू होगी, तो उसमें देन यू कैन ऑलवेज लिंक, यार ये पैसे एक्स क्या नवाज शरीफ के पास आए थे, जरदारी के पास गए, जरदारी से किसी और के पास गए, फिर किसी और के पास गए, यू कैन ऑलवेज लिंक द ट्रेल देन। तो यहाँ पर ये उससे भी ज्यादा सिक्योर है कि एक दफा आप आइडेंटिफाई कर लें कि ये नंबर किस बंदे का है, एंड देन ऑलवेज ट्रैक फॉर एवर कि वो कहाँ पर गया, और चूंकि रिकॉर्ड इम्यूटेबल होता है तो nobody can do any correction, any amendment, anything like that. Everything is 100% transparent. इवन के 100 साल के बाद भी आप उसका पूरा ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड निकाल सकते हैं कि जनाब ये मनी कहाँ से कहाँ गई और किस किस के पास गई। इट इज सो ट्रांसपेरेंट सिस्टम। जनूबी कोरिया ने एक्चुअली यही किया, उन्होंने इसको रेगुलाइज सिर्फ ये किया, उन्होंने कहा जी आपने जितनी कॉइन वगैरह खरीदें, सिर्फ आप ये बताएं कि ये आपका नंबर है, एंड दैट्स इट, दिस नंबर बिलोंग्स टू यू, जस्ट यू इंडिकेट दैट थिंग, एंड नाउ दे कैन ट्रैक एनीथिंग कि ये इस बंदे ने ट्रांजैक्शन की थी, वो ट्रांजैक्शन अब किसके पास गई, फिर किसके पास गई, फिर किसके पास गई। सो इट इज सो ट्रांसपेरेंट सिस्टम फ्रॉम दैट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू। कैश में तो था ना, आपने किसी को कैश दे दिया, देयर इज नो रिकॉर्ड देन, कहाँ से आया कहाँ गया, नोबडी नोज। बट सिंस इट इज ऑल इलेक्ट्रॉनिक एंड एवरी ट्रांजैक्शन इज बीइंग रिकॉर्डेड, कहाँ से आई थी कहाँ गई, दिस इज 100% ट्रांसपेरेंट।
अच्छा, आपका क्वेश्चन है
to this sort of transparent information.
जी
सॉरी जी काशिफ,
अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन। हेलो
जी जी, आई कैन हियर यू।
Sorry to interrupt, Kashif. Sorry, I was just asking another question related to my previous.
Right, sir. Sorry.
No problem. My question was that if you say that it's all transparent system, who has access to this transparency? Is it individuals who have bought Bitcoins, maybe in millions of people, or is it specific people or specific exchanges or whatever the authorized persons are?
Anyone.
For anyone, a website, there are websites where you can go in and look at those transactions yourself. It's open for everyone, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Ji Kashif.
Right. My question is why there is so much volatility still? Because we saw it first fluctuating, came downwards, then a little up. तो कहाँ तक कब ये तकरीबन ये stabilize होगी? और secondly, is there some government investing in the Bitcoin? You know?
बड़ा अच्छा सवाल पूछा काशिफ आपने, और इसका जवाब ये है कि whenever there is a new system or new technology or an idea that comes that can compete as money with the existing uh, systems, there is an element of price discovery that needs to happen, right? So nobody really knows what is the true value of Bitcoin. And for that to happen, there is a combination of speculators and investors and people from technology who have their own vision of how much value to assign to Bitcoin, and that is why you see all this volatility happening, because people really don't understand what the true value of Bitcoin is, and especially the other side is a moving target, because central banks are printing more and more money as time passes by, and every day that money is being depreciated in value, which means that the other types of money that is scarce in nature, such as Bitcoin or gold, has to go up in price. So you're right, even though the volatility is high, if you look at the overall upward trend since 2008, it has been up, right? So right now it is trading at $33,000, right? So that is an appreciation of like thousands of percent in the last 12 years. And this trend is likely to continue as the central banks around the world depreciate their currency. So to answer your second question, yes, the answer is yes. There are some countries that are trying to invest in Bitcoin. One of them being Iran. They have a policy now where they are going to set up Bitcoin farms and help people to mine the coins, and the coins would then be bought from them by the central banks, so that they can transact in Bitcoins with other nations, because of all those the US has imposed all kinds of restrictions on them. And as time passes, there's increasing speculation that smaller central banks may get on board as well, because they need some asset to back up their reserve currencies, because US dollar being a global currency is no longer an option. So lots of development is likely to happen in this space in the next 5 or 10 years, because the global monetary system is going to be disrupted.
Thank you.
मेरा नाम अजीज है. मैं एक छोटा सा सवाल, इनफैक्ट इट्स अ डम क्वेश्चन, इसलिए कि मैं इस इंडस्ट्री से काफ़ी एक्सपीरियंस रखता हूँ. ये PKI एक ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग सिस्टम है जो ऑथेंटिसिटी करता है द थर्ड पार्टी. तो हाउ डज ब्लॉकचेन, इसका एडवांटेज क्या है, एंड व्हाई इज रिप्लेसमेंट ऑफ PKI इज नेसेसरी?
Sorry, sir, the replacement of what?
PKI.
Oh, PKI.
Public key infrastructure.
So PKI is the technology that is being in the wallet, right? You have the private key and then the public key. So
बिल्कुल.
Is being used in this in the blockchain distributed ledger technology, right? So that is already there. The key thing, I don't know, आप शायद late आपने join किया, I don't know. The key thing is about the creating a trustless system that is not in control of any government or any body that can impose the will on the monetary system that Bitcoin brings. So that is the value proposition of Bitcoin. So people who understand how the global monetary works based on the fractional reserve system, where the banks have this power to create money out of thin air and collect interest rate on it, that in itself is, I would say, an unsound and a dishonest monetary system. And some people have figured it out, and they are not happy with central banks bailing out the elite banks and creating all kinds of shenanigans. So this area is someone for people who value their freedom and liberty and want to transact with other people in an honest way. So that is the background behind why this Bitcoin is increasing in price, because people want their net worth to not lose value to the rampant money printing that is happening, and they're investing in Bitcoin and other stores of value such as real estate and gold.
Thank you. Shukriya. Shukriya. बहुत shukriya.
Asfar, what is the basic principal currency in which is it to be bought in US dollar or
Any currency, sir.
नहीं सर, कुछ भी यूज कर लें आप, रुपए आपके वो जरा पैक्सफुल में जाएंगे तो रुपयों में मेरे ख्याल में बात हो रही है, ट्रांजैक्शन हो रही है।
नहीं, रुपयों में तो हो रही है, बट रुपया एज यू सेड के इट इज इक्विवेलेंट टू लेट्स से $40,000, तो यू हैव टू मेक द अमाउंट इक्विवेलेंट टू दैट डॉलर।
जी सर, ऑब्वियसली मतलब
तो obviously means that the ultimately gain would be to the US dollar.
No.
नहीं सर, आप यूएस डॉलर में थोड़ी चेंज करा रहे हैं अपने रुपयों को, आप डायरेक्टली बंदे से खरीद रहे हैं बिटकॉइन, उसको रुपए दे रहे हैं आप। US dollar is no longer in the picture in your scenario if you are in Pakistan.
No, that I do agree. But what I mean that once you define the value in US dollar,
सर आप उसको किसी भी करेंसी में डिफाइन कर सकते हैं। आप उधर जाएंगे तो आपसे पूछेगा आपने किस करेंसी में पेमेंट करनी है, यूएस डॉलर में करनी है, पाउंड में करनी है, जापानीज येन में करनी है।
नहीं, आप मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि किस करेंसी में करनी है, आप उसकी वैल्यू किस करेंसी में रख रहे हैं।
देयर इज नो करेंसी,
मतलब अगर जापान
करेंसी, हर करेंसी का अपना है।
नहीं, करेंसी का अपना है, तो अगर $40,000 आप कहते हैं तो पाकिस्तान में जो बेचेगा वो इक्विवेलेंट अमाउंट ऑफ $40,000 ही लेगा ना, पाकिस्तानी
सर वो तो दिस इज द वे ऑफ डूइंग कन्वर्जन। आप एक यूएस को एक रेफरेंस ले रहे हैं ना, आप उसको पाउंड में कहना शुरू हो जाएं, आप उसको रुपीस में कहना शुरू हो जाएं। हम तो वो तो यूएस के एक रेफरेंस के पॉइंट ऑफ यूएस को इनका इधर कर रहे हैं। देयर इज नो प्रिंसिपल करेंसी, देयर इज नो बेस करेंसी इन दिस वन, इट इज जस्ट व्हाटएवर रेफरेंस यू वांट। आप उसको पाउंड में करना चाहें पाउंड में कर लें, पाउंड से ले लें रेफरेंस, जापानीज येन से करना है जापानीज येन से ले लें। उधर इसकी जो साइट है ना basecoin.com, उधर आप जाएंगे तो उधर आपको जितनी मेजर करेंसीज हैं सारी नजर आ रही होती हैं कि आपने किस में लेना है, और उसी के हिसाब से रेट आ रहा होता है वहां पे। सो देयर इज नो बेस करेंसी, देयर इज नो प्रिंसिपल करेंसी देयर।
ओके
तो आपके लिए कन्वीनियंस के लिए है कि अगर आपको वो कहेगा, अगर आप उसको कहें 0.01 बिटकॉइन मैंने लेना है तो वो समझ में नहीं आएगी ना आपको, बाद आपको कोई रेफरेंस चाहिए इस वक्त, बिकॉज यू डोंट नो 0.01 बिटकॉइन का है क्या। जी सर।
अच्छा, दूसरा सवाल मेरा, सॉरी, दूसरा सवाल ये था कि आपने माइनिंग का जब जिक्र किया तो हर जगह देयर आर नंबर ऑफ माइनर्स, हाउ दैट पर्टिकुलर माइनर, क्या कोई ब्लॉक उनको असाइन होता है या रैंडमली वो इट कैन गो एंड, तो अगर आपकी इक्विपमेंट इतना पावरफुल नहीं है तो यू वोंट बी गेनिंग एनीथिंग।
जी सर, सो उसमें ये होता है कि हर 10 मिनट में एक ब्लॉक, नया ब्लॉक बन रहा होता है, और इस तरह से वो प्रॉब्लम, जो मैथ प्रॉब्लम जिसका मैंने जिक्र किया था, वो ऐसे उसने डिफ़िकल्टी जो है सॉफ्टवेयर, जो उसकी लॉजिक है कि वो जितने लोग पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं उसी हिसाब से उसका डिफ़िकल्टी लेवल बढ़ता रहता है। तो अगर आपके पास अब तो जैसे चाइना में लोगों ने बिटकॉइन फार्म्स खड़े किए हैं, दे आर किलोमीटर्स लॉन्ग एंड दे आर बेसिकली डोमिनेटिंग दिस फील्ड। लेकिन अगर आपके पास ऐसा कंप्यूटर है जो कि इतना स्ट्रांग नहीं है, आप ऐसा कर सकते हैं कि यू कैन जॉइन व्हाट इज कॉल्ड अ माइनिंग पूल। और माइनिंग पूल जो है, आप सॉफ्टवेयर डाउनलोड करें अपने कंप्यूटर पे और अपना वॉलेट एक बना लें अपने सॉफ्टवेयर पे, उस वॉलेट का एड्रेस होगा, वो वॉलेट का एड्रेस आप जो है उस माइनिंग पूल को दे दें, और फिर आप जो है वो सॉफ्टवेयर जो आपके कंप्यूटर पे उसको जो है आप रन करना शुरू कर दें। So your computer resources will then participate in that mining pool and you will get a portion of the profits. तो प्रॉब्लम ये है कि वो जो प्रॉफिट्स जो होंगे ना वो बहुत ही जैसे कम ही होंगे, जैसे एक पैसा, बहुत ही 1 सेंट 2 सेंट। So you really need, at least for mining bitcoins, really powerful computers if you want to make like real money out of that, and that is a difficult proposition because in this space people have invested in like what is called the ASIC technology, जो कि स्पेशली डिजाइन हुई हुई है बिटकॉइन को माइन करने के लिए. So that is the challenge with making money using mining. और दूसरी बात ये कि मेरे ख्याल से इतनी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जो ज़ाया हो रही है, लोग जो है ना इससे खुश नहीं है, तो we are moving away from this proof of work mining consensus model towards a proof of stake. और जो नई जो projects आ रहे हैं, I don't see any ये जो कि proof of work mining algorithm को use कर रहा है because of the huge electricity needs.
What Vakar Zaka is doing in Pakistan?
Exactly, that was my question. Can you throw some light on this? कि वकार जका क्या कर रहा है? Is it just mining और उसने अपनी करेंसी भी निकाली है कि नहीं?
अब ये सर मैंने उसको इतना ज़्यादा स्टडी नहीं किया. जो मेरा अंदाज़ा है कि जैसे आपने भी कहा था वो ऊपर कहीं चला गया और इज फाउंड सम चीप और फ्री इलेक्ट्रिसिटी रिसोर्स. और अभी भी जो है इफ द बिटकॉइन वैल्यू कंटिन्यूज टू अप्रिशिएट इवन ड्यूरिंग द हार्विंग इवेंट, राइट, अगर 6.25 भी अगर आपको बिटकॉइन मिल रहा है पर ब्लॉक, और यू हैव वेरी strong computer setup over there, then 6.25 multiplied by what 33,000, that's about $200,000 per block, right? That's quite a bit of money for someone who lives in Pakistan.
Yes.
So till now it's quite profitable. और अगर halving events होते रहे और प्राइस बढ़ती रही, और से अगर $1 million पे चली गई इसकी प्राइस, जैसे कि मॉडल्स प्रेडिक्ट कर रहे हैं, and I don't know by the way that will happen, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. अगर $1 million पे एक बिटकॉइन भी निकालता है कोई, so that's $1 million right away if, in their pockets.
Yes.
So right now, they're quite profitable from what I'm hearing. The miners are not only charging, being rewarded for Bitcoin, but remember that they're also collecting transaction fees. और जब भी network congestion होती है, the transaction fees goes through the roof. $50, $100 तक हो जाती है, because people want to get their transactions confirmed because they want to get out of the trade. So sometimes it can, really get expensive, and they are trying to deal with this issue through these layer 2 solutions that I told you about.
अच्छा, ये बताइए, ब्लॉकचेन पे आ जाते हैं थोड़ा. पाकिस्तान का एक बहुत बड़ा मसला रिगिंग का मसला है. जब भी इलेक्शन होते हैं उसके बाद जो भी हारता है उसमें शोर मचाना है, रिगिंग हुई. क्या हम ब्लॉकचेन को प्रैक्टिकली पाकिस्तान में इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं वोटिंग में, और वो ट्रांसपेरेंट उसको बना सकते हैं? एनीबॉडी कैन गो एंड सी व्हाट इज गोइंग ऑन, किसको कितने वोट मिले, किसका वोट कहाँ गया. प्रैक्टिकली पॉसिबल है? फिजिबल पॉसिबल तो है, लेकिन फिजिबल भी है कि नहीं?
सर आई थिंक सो इज पॉसिबल. मैंने बल्कि एक पैटेंट देखा था, किसी ने फाइल किया हुआ था इस सिलसिले में, वोटिंग थ्रू ब्लॉकचेन. अब मुझे याद नहीं रहा, मगर आप इंटरेस्टेड हो, आई कैन फाइंड इट आउट एंड सेंड यू द लिंक. But definitely there are people who are talking about this, especially for developing countries. But the problem is, I don't know whether it will be implemented ever or not, because we know, right? You need some kind of people who are actually, willing to do that, right? Because we know what happens behind the scenes. People will not. It's all about power. This whole decentralized blockchain is giving power back to the people. And the people who are addicted to control will do everything in their power to, to kind of prevent that. But this cannot be stopped now. I can tell you that. People are going to continue to find solutions around this government regulation, and continue to transact different products. I was just reading about a decentralized shopping mall that is being created to address the problems that you have with Amazon. अब Amazon क्या करता है? Amazon जो है वो merchants को onboard करता है, फिर उनका सारा डेटा कलेक्ट करके और फिर देखता है कि किसकी जो है वो ज़्यादा सेल हो रही है, और फिर अपने जो है ना ठप्पा लगा के वही प्रोडक्ट जो है ना वही बेचना शुरू कर देता है. Right? You know that. So the decentralized shopping malls are going to address these issues with these centralized, social medias and all these Amazon type companies who use and get an edge because they are, using these big data technologies to front run the system, right? So data जो है वो different तरीके से store होगा different decentralized systems में. So Facebook or Google, they are out of their time has come. Now we are moving towards different decentralized solutions in every field. So there is going decentralized solution being built for like streaming video, for social media, for YouTube kind of technologies where people don't get censored for speaking or talking about their point of view, right, of things. Because that is what is happening on social media. Whether we agree with that or not, that is a separate thing. But the freedom of expression or the ability to say what you feel is right should not be taken from the individual. Obviously, there will be bad actors who are going to take advantage of these systems, but you cannot stop this decentralization anymore. It's going to happen now.
अच्छा, यहाँ पे जरा ऑडियंस के लिए थोड़ा सा आप एक छोटी सी डेमो दे सकते हो कि हाउ डू वी गो ऑन सम साइट टू बाय एनी कॉइन, और जरूरी नहीं कि हमारे पास 40 लाख की अमाउंट है तभी हम एक बिटकॉइन खरीदेंगे, वी कैन ऑलवेज बाय इन फ्रैक्शन आल्सो. तो छोटी सी अगर डेमो दे सको तो आई थिंक दैट विल बी इवन बहुत सारे लोगों के लिए शायद इंफॉर्मेटिव हो.
अच्छा सर, मैं अब असल में पाकिस्तान में आई एम नॉट श्योर, ये पाकिस्तान में लोग हैं उनके पास क्या अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं. Just trying to think. I mean, I could probably show you the wallet if you're interested in that. Just trying to think कि क्या शो करूँ मैं आपको. Let me see if I can.
वैसे इस सिलसिले में मैंने सर सुहेल अमीर और सेनेटर नुमान वजीर को रिक्वेस्ट की थी कि भाई ये जो सेनेट का इलेक्शन है ये क्योंकि बड़ा लिमिटेड है और मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी के थ्रू आप इसको एज ए डेमोन्स्ट्रेटर के तौर पर इस्तेमाल करके दैट इज द बेस्ट टाइम. तो अब आई डोंट नो ऑल दोज हु आर दैट मच रिसोर्सफुल एंड कैन गेट इट.
हाँ, ये छोटा सा प्रोजेक्ट हो सकता है सर. बिल्कुल, आपने बड़ा पायलट प्रोजेक्ट के तौर पे आप इसको ले सकते हैं. छोटी सी जगह पे यही कंप्यूटर लगा के आप इसको एज अ प्रूफ ऑफ कॉन्सेप्ट हो जाएगा.
ऑल दोज हु आर एक्सपर्ट्स इन दिस, उसमें वो पैरेलल में साथ साथ उस चीज को चला के डेमोन्स्ट्रेट मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ साइंस को कह के उसको पैरेलल में अनऑफिशियल वे में दिखाएं और फिर उसको एज ए प्रूफ भी एज R&D प्रोजेक्ट डाल सकते हैं.
यस यस.
और एनी यूनिवर्सिटी कैन टेक दिस टास्क.
हाँ यार, ये कोई इतना मुश्किल नहीं सर. इसके टेम्पलेट मौजूद हैं, सॉफ्टवेयर मौजूद हैं, फ्री में है, डाउनलोड करके आप इसको कर सकते हैं. यस.
Can you see my screen, sir? Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Sir, yeah, this is a wallet where I have some money. It's not money, but some tokens. And these are all the tokens that that are available to me to buy or exchange. So for example, I have some Ethereum over here, 0.12 Ethereum, and its value in Canadian dollars is a couple of $100. Yes, sir. If I go here and if I want to send this Ethereum to someone,
मुझे भेज दो.
Sorry?
मुझे भेज दो.
और आप अपना पब्लिक एड्रेस मुझे दे दें सर. मैं आपको पूरा अपना जो है वो पोर्टफोलियो जो है वो. So you need that person's address, and then once that person sends you the address, you send, and the Bitcoin will be transferred to that person's wallet. Right. The other thing you can do, you can do an exchange. So if I have some Ethereum over here, and I think that Ethereum value may go down, so I want to go to a stable coin to park my money, as a trader. Okay, भाई नीचे जाएगा तो फिर मैं दोबारा से Ethereum खरीदूंगा. So I can go to a stable coin like USDT, or I can go to and buy Bitcoin, right? So for 0.12 Ethereum, I can get 0.0047 Bitcoins. So if I do an exchange, they will charge me some fee, network fee, which is what, $1.31, and all my Ethereum will be converted into Bitcoin.
सो ये सर मंजर देखें यहाँ पे डायरेक्टली हो रहा है, ये किस डॉलर शॉलर में नहीं जा
नहीं
रहा।
नहीं नहीं, वो सब कुछ वो तो मैं समझ गया। मेरा सवाल अब जैसे ही आपने इसको ट्रांसफर किया, जो आप कह रहे थे कि कंफर्मेशन ऑफ ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन विल टेक टाइम, हाउ मच टाइम वुड इट टेक? और वो जो माइनिंग वाला बंदा है वो इसको कैसे अथेंटिकेट करेगा?
सो वो बिहाइंड द सीन्स हो रहा है सर, एंड यू आर राइट कि जो है ट्रांजैक्शन में थोड़ा सा टाइम लगता है डिपेंडिंग
हाँ
ऑन द नेटवर्क कंजेशन,
हाँ
but eventually the funds show up, right, in maybe like minute or two, mostly, unless there is like a huge network congestion, right, which may sometimes earlier on when people when the Bitcoin value went all the way to $20,000 in 2017, there was a huge lineup where people wanted to sell, but because the blockchain has a limited capacity for transactions, people had to wait for hours to get their transactions through. So those are some of the problems, early, teething problems for every technology, and the projects are trying to resolve those issues, right? But right now,
and
अगर
the
मैं change करूँगा ये फौरन हो जाएगा. There's no
and
problem.
the amount of delay in transaction will cost much more than the quick transaction.
In some cases, you're right. Agar in case of network congestion, so this is a problem that is known, and that is why वो मैंने आपको बताया था ना, Ethereum is moving from 1.0 to 2.0, second iteration जिसमें वो address कर रहे हैं इन सब problems को. So no technology is perfect in the first iteration, right? I hope you realize that. Even in
लेकिन
the
असफर
जी
असफर डिजिटल वर्ल्ड में एक मिनट तो इट इज मिलियंस ऑफ सेंचुरीज, इट इज सेंचुरीज, राइट? बिकॉज आई नो आई एम डेवलपिंग वेरियस ट्रेडिंग सिस्टम, और हम उधर एक एक माइक्रो सेकंड के लिए हम लड़ाई कर रहे होते हैं, और आई हैव टू एक्सप्लेन, अगर एक माइक्रो सेकंड ज्यादा लग जाए मेरे ट्रांजेक्शन में, आई हैव टू एक्सप्लेन व्हाई इट वेंट, इट देयर वाज डिले ऑफ 1 माइक्रो सेकंड इवन, राइट? और 1 माइक्रो सेकंड गेन करने के लिए वी स्पेंड थाउजेंड्स ऑफ डॉलर जस्ट टू गेन एन एज ऑफ 1 माइक्रो सेकंड। तो यहाँ पर अगर आप मिनट की बात कर रहे थे तो ये तो प्रैक्टिकल मुझे नहीं लगता इन टुडेज वर्ल्ड।
So you're absolutely right, sir. From a payment system, जो currently जो centralized payment systems हैं, Visa, Mastercard, और जो आप बात कर रहे थे for trading, you're absolutely right. They're faster. But the key thing that you have to understand that this technology brings something new to from a that it decentralizes everything. The technology is still evolving. It is not mature right now. और जो मैंने आपको एग्जांपल्स दिए ऑलरेडी, अभी वो उसका जो है वो वीडियो रिलीज किया था. देयर इज वन पर्सन, वन प्रोजेक्ट that is working on what is called the lightning network, that is going to act as a layer 2 solution over the Bitcoin, and he was demoing what is called streaming money, right? So you can send money, or you can pay money to people on a per second basis. So that is just a matter of time, sir, they are going to develop solutions that are not only fast but faster than the existing systems, and they are decentralized, and that is where the power lies for all of this technology that is happening in the blockchain space.
ओके,
एक और चीज सर मैं आपको दिखा दूं, स्टेकिंग जो है, that's another thing that you can do. You can stake. So if you have some coin over here, you buy some coins, and then you can grow by staking, right? So the as rewards, more coins will be given to you. So think of it as like you're investing your money, and you're getting you're collecting a yield on that. So that's another way of investing in this space.
राइट, ओके।
तो ये नेशनल जो हमारे रिजर्व बैंक्स होते हैं, ये लोग भी जहाँ ऑथराइज हैं वो लोग भी ट्रांजैक्शन कर सकते हैं इसमें, या इट्स द इंडिविजुअल ओनली?
एनीवन सर?
सर कोई भी है सर, ये ओपन सोर्स है, कोई भी जो है नेटवर्क ज्वाइन कर ले, छोड़ दे. अगर मैं सॉफ्टवेयर डाउनलोड कर लेता हूँ और आप सॉफ्टवेयर डाउनलोड कर लेते हैं अपने अपने कंप्यूटर पे, ठीक है, तो मैं जो हूँ, आई डोंट इवन हैव टू गो टू द एक्सचेंज. I can just send Bitcoin to you directly from my computer to your computer. I don't need this exchange, by the way. You see the beauty of this whole system.
बैंक्स
is
को भी थोड़ी ऑब्जेक्शन है ना इसके ऊपर,
किसको ऑब्जेक्शन है?
ये जैसे पाकिस्तान वगैरह में स्टेट बैंक वगैरह जो आपको परमिशन नहीं दे रहे।
तो होती रहे, अगर किसी के पास बिटकॉइन आ रहे हैं, अगर वो टेक्नोलॉजी सेक्टर में काम कर रहा है और कोई कंपनी उसको बिटकॉइन में पे कर रही है, तो वो बिटकॉइन उसके वॉलेट में आ रहे हैं, तो उसको पाकिस्तानी गवर्नमेंट को तो थोड़ी पता है कि वो किससे क्या ट्रांजैक्ट कर रहा है और कितने लोगों को पकड़ेंगे वो और कहाँ
इन्फोर्स
पकड़ेंगे।
करना बड़ा मुश्किल है सर, प्रैक्टिकली मुमकिन नहीं है शायद इसको इन्फोर्स करना।
नहीं तो फिर ये लीगलिटी और इलीगलिटी का इशू क्या है?
Obviously
Officially-
government जो है वो basically they want to, obviously for them it's not an idea, you know, they want to control of the you
Yes,
know,
that
of the
should be
currency system. That's the bottom line, right? But as an individual, you need to understand what is the future of this fiat currency system that is not backed by anything. If you go and read financial history, you cannot find a single instance where the paper money system has survived for more than 100 years. It has always collapsed, always, right? And this will also collapse. The problem is that this is a time issue when this collapse will happen, right? And the elites already know that, right? There is like $50 trillion of global debt, right? That and only like $3 trillion of money floating around. So this global debt can never be paid back. So the only way they can continue to run this Ponzi scheme, that I would like to call it, is to keep the money printing presses on. And the elites, agar aap jaएं, or as I said, the World Economic Forum, they have already started talking about the new Bretton Woods system and how they want to eventually replace they're not saying that openly, that they want to replace the US dollar as the global currency to bring in a world currency, like the special drawing rights that IMF has in there as a reserve, or something that is backed by gold, or something is going to happen, because dollar is no longer going to be a reserve currency. I can tell you that in the next 10, 15 years, maybe, I don't know, 20, but this will go away. So people need to understand that before this happens, the currencies will need to be destroyed, and in a climate ऐसा create होगा जिसमें वो कहेंगे कि ये crisis create कर दिया, हो गया है, अब जो है हमें कुछ करना है, तो ये नया जो solution ये है, और this is the new Bretton Woods system, और वो अपना जो उनकी जो scheme जिसपे वो planning कर रहे हैं, they are going to roll that scheme out and say ये नया तुम्हारा जो है currency है, इसको जो है वो follow करना है. So people already know this. Smart people who know how the system works, they already know that that's going to happen, and they are starting to move into Bitcoin. They're starting to move into gold, silver, and all kinds of hard assets. Art ho gaya, or the expensive valuables, because they know that the system is bound to fail one day.
अच्छा, गवर्नमेंट्स का सर डायलेमा ये है, देखें वो अवेयर्स क्यों है थोड़ी सी, नंबर वन इस क्रिप्टो करेंसी से। अभी हर गवर्नमेंट के पास ये इख्तियार है जितनी मर्जी चाहे प्रिंटिंग कर ले, ठीक है, नोबडी गुनाह है, वो जब चाहते हैं तो छापा खाना शुरू कर देते हैं। लेकिन अगर क्रिप्टो पे कोई भी करेंसी, अगर कोई कंट्री जो है क्रिप्टो करेंसी ही पे चला जाता है सिंपल, तो गवर्नमेंट के पास से ये इख्तियार निकल जाएगा कि वो मनी प्रिंटिंग करना शुरू कर दे। दे वांट बी एबल टू प्रिंट दैट मनी। इसलिए जनरली स्पेशली इररिस्पांसिबल गवर्नमेंट्स लाइक यूएस गवर्नमेंट, जो हर वक्त मनी छापती रहती है, तो उनके लिए इट इज नाइटमेयर कि उनके हाथ से ये इख्तियार निकल जाए कि वो डॉलर छापना बंद कर सकते हैं। सो दैट्स व्हाई दे आर जनरली awares of this cryptocurrencies.
सही फरमाया सर आप। So और कोई सवाल सर? Anyone else? सब ठीक है। I hope I've been able to provide you with some information that is beneficial to you and helps you understand this sector. अगर कोई आपका और सवाल हो, feel free to send me a message, or and I'll be happy to help you out.
Thank you, Azfar Saab. Thanks a lot. बहुत शुक्रिया.
Thank you, sir, for setting this up and giving me the opportunity to speak on this topic.
Thank you, Azfar. Thank you for your time, buddy.
Thanks, Nasir Bhai, all the कोई सवाल पूछना हो तो
Well,
always
I have written a question, a kind of, twist to all the serious discussion. I say I want to buy 3 full crypto coins. Can you kindly suggest where should I get the money from?
Good question.
Well, just to end everything on a funny note. Thank you very much, buddy. That was very educative.
Thank you,
No
Azfar
problem,
Saab. It was a very informative lecture.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Allah Hafiz.
Appreciate the
Allah
compliment.
Hafiz.
Thank you, Salahuddin, for arranging this thing.
No problem, sir. You're most welcome.